Hello, my name's Joel Hargis with the Florida Aviation Network. We're in for a real treat today. We are at Love's Landing here in Florida, and we are going to look at a project that Mr. Steve Wolf is working on, and we have Jack Hallett with us today. Steve is actually in the process of building a P47. And so, Steve, I know you've built a lot of aircraft in your lifetime. How many do you think you've done?
Well, I've probably done about 25, starting when I was 16 years old in high school, building my first airplane. And, I've just been doing it ever since. I have two passions, flying and building. And I've always got to have a project.
All right. So he's built a lot of airplanes. And this time he decided to build a P47. And I think Jack actually had a little bit to do that. But Steve, why don't you tell us what inspired you to build a P47? And obviously you're not building a full-size P47. Tell us what you're doing.
Well, I'm building a 60% because the original is so big and you end up with so much power and money, and this is still a major project. But, I met Jack back when he was 94 years old. He's an amazing man. We flew with him in our aerobatic school. He flew with my wife, Kathy, and then he flew with me on his 95th birthday in a pit special. He did the takeoff and the flight, did aerobatics that just blew us away. And we've spent a lot of time with this guy over the last 6 years now, and he's just been incredible. I've always loved his stories about World War II, and one of the airplanes he flew, besides the P-38, which actually was his favorite, but was a P-47 that he named Frigid Midget, and he was flying with the 367th Fighter Group in Europe. And I just always have loved the P-47. It's got a big round engine. It's massive. I have a thing for big propellers. It's got a big prop and stuff. So it was just, I was looking for a project. I finished my little biplane, Samsonite, and I'm decided I love the engine, the radial engine that was in it, called a Werner, and I decided I wanted to build another airplane around the Werner, and I was trying to think of what to build. And then all of a sudden, I just decided, you know what? How about a 60% scale, because the engine would work with it, P-47 Thunderbolt D model, just like Jack flew, and paint it like Frigid Midget, paint it up. So I called Jack about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, and said, hey, Jack, guess what? And he goes, what? And I said, you got to live to be 102 or 3. And he says, why? And he says, I'm building Frigid Midget, and I want you to see it fly. So that has given him inspiration to keep going, and that's why I decided to do the project.
That's great. And so just for the record, Jack turned 100 last Tuesday. So he's still as ornery as ever. We have trouble getting this done because he's cracking jokes all the time. So behind us here, I want to turn around here. You've got some really cool stuff. Like, share with us what this is right here.
Well, Jack flew 104 missions in World War II, and this helmet he wore on every mission. And so it goes back from the P-38 through the P-47, and flying. This helmet was over Normandy on D-Day. It flew through the Battle of the Bulge, and then supported Patton's Third Army on his march into Germany. So it's got quite a piece of history right there. And this is the P-38, the type of aircraft, and the aircraft Jack was flying on D-Day, flying top cover. And like I said, it's actually his favorite airplane, and it's a wonderful airplane. He talks about how well it flies all the time. It's just a real machine.
Here, let me have this real quick. So here, the next thing. So the next thing we've got here is a model of what you're getting ready to build, right, Steve?
Yeah, this is actually a model of, and you can see on it, Frigid Midget with the yellow cowl. It's got a Disney dwarf flare. You have to use your imagination on what the dwarf's doing there. And I'm going to let Jack tell you the story later of why this olive drab airplane has silver wings. And we're going to have it painted just like this.
All right. And I know you got one exceptional piece of equipment that was donated to the project, as I understand it, right? And explain to folks what you have in your hand there.
Yeah, this is a real P-47D throttle quadrant. And it was donated by Jed Doggett, who owns a Warbird guy, owns an A-26 bomber. And when I told him what I was building, he says, you know, give me your address. I've got something for you. And a few days later, this showed up in the mail. So we're putting it in the airplane as is, not restored, as is, with the wear and tear on it.
That's awesome. So we're going to go into more details about how he's going to paint the plane, and how do you even get a set of plans for a 60% P47 D model. So we're going to walk out and show everybody how Steve started with the plans on the P47. So one of the tricky parts about building a 60% P47 is there are no plans, are there?
No, there were no plans, no kits, nothing that really satisfied, because I'm pretty meticulous at how I build things. And I want to build this as a super scale, meaning it's got to look not scaled down. And luckily the P47 was big enough that you can scale 60% and still the aircraft, the canopy, everything can be the same. So I drew all of my own drawings, and I'm not a computer guy, so I started out with just a preliminary fuselage drawing here, just the layout, and I scaled it off of drawings through the Air Corps, which is a website, which is one time I do get on a computer, and they have all 19,416 original drawings. But I was able to just get scale dimensions off it is all I really needed, because I had to draw all my own structure and my own deal to end up with an aircraft light enough. But it's got to look right. And then this is a preliminary wing layout. We got the spar layout. And I've done the spars because I have a company out in Oregon that's actually manufacturing the spars for me, which is helping. So it's really been quite a project, drawing pictures, building, and then making notes and changing and stuff. So yeah, it's been quite a deal.
Well, that's amazing. This is kind of old school, if you will. Not very many people attempt to put a airplane together from hand-drawn plans. I mean, that's certainly a dying art. But so let's go in and see what the airplane looks like so far. So here we are at the project right now. This is the P47 as Steve's gotten it so far. I think he's been on this about 10 months. Steve, why don't you tell us what you've done so far and what comes next?
Yeah, this is all sheet metal monocoque construction, just like the original P47. And so when I sat down and drew up the drawings, and I've got to come out around 1,300 pounds empty, so not much more than that to operate with the engine I have. So I have to really be very, very aware of the weight and stuff, and also have the structural strength. So it's built a lot like an airplane a lot of aviators are familiar with, the RV-3, 4, 5, 6s, and our Van's aircraft. And I actually was one of Van's first employees ever, so I'm familiar with Van's airplanes. But I had to build every part of this airplane from just flat sheet stock. So I bought a lot of sheets of, about 28 sheets, 4 by 12 foot sheets of aluminum. And then I ended up having to hand pound out every bulkhead and make forms and stuff to make all the bulkheads that go in the fuselage, which there's a zillion of them in here. And then once that's done, then we put all the stringers on, which run fore and aft, longerons and stuff. And then we start skinning, fitting the skins at the back of the aircraft at the tail and working our way forward. And to make it easier, we put it on a rotisserie here. And this allows me to rotate for working. So I'm not laying on my back or working off of a ladder. It actually can rotate, and I can actually turn the airplane upside down, work on it, and set it back this way. And that helps a lot. It can lock in any position. So it's been about, like you said, about 10 months, about 8 months of actual construction, beating on pieces of metal and stuff. I have a pneumatic hammer that I use. I got an English wheel for some of the compound stuff. A lot of it is just done with a hand beating on it with a hammer and stuff. It's been quite a project. And this is just the size of the canopy, which is scaled to the original P47, a mock-up. But Airplane Plastics is now in the process of blowing the bubble for it, a scale bubble. And this is where the wings slide in here into these slots. The tire comes up in this hole. So when the wheel retracts, it comes right up here, and the tire fits right in here. This will actually get a hand-hammered out piece of aluminum back in here. So, and this is as per the original P47 actually has this. If you ever look at a real one, look up in the wheel well, and you'll see that. So that's kind of how it's been going. And Jack's been coming out about every other week and having dinner and a movie and see how we're doing.
So I think that's incredible progress for 10 months, actual 8 months of building. And so talk to us a little bit about how you're going to do. Are you going to put the guns in the wings? Or what kind of panel will it have in it, and avionics? What's your plan for that?
We want it to look and be just like a real P47, especially from a distance until it comes up within 100 feet of you before you go, wow, I don't think that's a full-size one. It's got to look right, sound right, and everything. So it's going to have an 84-inch four-blade propeller called a GT prop built in Italy that builds warbird propellers for full-scale warbirds, but they're building me a custom one for this that'll look just like the real P47 prop, for example. So everything that we're doing is trying to make this right. As far as the guns go, yeah, we'll have gun barrels in the wing. I guess I could have oxyacetylene deal that would make it pop, pop, pop. I don't want to get the ATF after me too much. But, you know, it is going to have the bomb racks and all this stuff on it. So, and then we're going to distress the paint job. We're going to make this aircraft look like it's had at least 50 missions. And just like Jack will tell you later why the wings are silver and stuff, even though it's an olive drab airplane. But we're going to paint it, and we got one of the best painters in the United States to help me paint this, and that's John Starr. He's paints some of the award-winning aircraft, and he's beautiful with an airbrush. We're going to have the soot on the gun barrels and the exhaust stains and even the nicks and dings and stuff, and just like the throttle quadrant going in unrestored, he's going to distress the inside of the cockpit. So everything will look like a used airplane, even though it's brand new.
That's great. I just can't wait to see it. So obviously one of the last and most important things is the engine that you're going to put on this. And we actually are going to go over and look at one that Steve put on his last project, the Samsonite. And that's our next shot. So now here we are at Steve's last project called the Samsonite, again, which he drew from scratch. It's actually I think it's a 2/3 scale of Samson, which was a plane he built many years ago. But we're over here to show you the same round engine that he's going to use in the P47. So, Steve, tell us about this engine and why are you going to use it for the 47 and use it here?
Well, first of all, it's hard to find a new radial engine, especially a radial engine of this size. This engine puts out 358 foot-pounds of torque at 2,000 RPM, so it's very powerful. That's more than 180 horse Lycoming, and it's a nice 34.5-inch diameter. Most radials, like the Warners, things that we can find around here in the States, and they're rare now. The antique engines built in the 30s are rare, and they're really like 42 inches in diameter. So to build the P47, it'd end up a monster, even bigger yet. But this engine allowed it, and I've had 100 hours on it of good running. And I got this engine through Scalebirds up in Connecticut, who specialize in warbird downsized replicas. So, you know, this was just they're building a P36 right now, and they're getting close. They're running a 7-cylinder. I got the 9-cylinder. Werner builds a lot of different engines, and I decided to use the engine, looking for a project, and just frigid midget, the P47. And you got to get Jack to tell you why I named it frigid midget, too.
All right. Thanks for that. So what a beautiful airplane. We're going to finish up here and get Jack Hallett in this story because he was so inspirational to the whole project. And so we'll talk to him in a few minutes. So last but not least, one of the things we really want to go in detail is how this airplane is going to look. And Steve has told us a little bit that he kind of wants it to look like it had 50 missions. And one of the things we've alluded to is that it's not like most P-47s. And so I think Steve's going to paint it the way Jack flew it. Steve, go ahead and explain to us how you're going to finish the plane and about this picture, and then we're going to let Jack explain why it looks the way it does.
Yeah, the airplane was actually really a cool-looking P-47 in that, as you can see, it had a yellow cowl, which is all part of I think the 367th Fighter Group, and the 4NQ on it, and their symbol colors on the tail and everything, and then, of course, the frigid midget, misspelled, MIGDGIT, rather, instead of ET, but Jack didn't have the heart to tell the sign painter that he misspelled it. But anyway, and of course it does have the Disney dwarf on the cowl, given a little symbol to the sign to the Germans. Anyway, the airplane was olive drab, and it came out of the 8th Air Force and then was brought over to the 9th Air Force where Jack was, where he named it Frigid Midget. And the performance of the aircraft was just typical P-47.
Yeah, and so Jack, can you explain to us why it's got silver wings on top, and a little bit about Frigid Midget and the performance that made it be the colors that it is or is not?
Well, flying the P-38, when you pulled up, it went up. They brought in, when we switched over from the P-38 to the P-47, they brought in 3 aircraft for the whole group to check out in. We lost one the very first day. The pilot bailed out, which left 2. So nobody had very much time in the aircraft. So when they assigned me this aircraft, it had olive drab all the way on the top side. I was flying it. We were at Saint-Dizier at the time, and we moved with the troops. So as we moved, the first squadron that got to the new base grabbed the best quarters. So at Saint-Dizier, my squadron was first to get there, and we grabbed this chateau that was at the top of the hill. At the base of the hill was the Marne River. On the other side of the river was the air base. So there was a swinging footbridge that had been bombed out, and you could get from the chateau to the field. So as I took off, I looked over to my left, and I saw these guys about to cross the bridge. And I figured, well, I'll put them in the river by buzzing them. So I was taking off. They were on my left, and I made a 180, dove at them. They dropped, but not in the river. And all of a sudden, I looked up, and there were 3 trees staring me in the face. So I hauled back on the stick. The aircraft attitude changed, but the altitude did not. Had I been in a P-38, it would have gone up. The P-47 continued down with the nose high, so I went through 3 trees. So I called an emergency landing, came around, landed, and I had a pretty good-sized piece of wood through the engine, rumpled up both wings, landed, taxied in, and my engineering officer, Tex Young, said, "Jack, what the hell did you do to this airplane?" I said, "Well, I went through 3 trees. It was pretty obvious that we needed new wings put on I tore off the oil cooler, which is right near the tail wheel. And I don't remember if I did damage to the horizontal stabilizer. So that might have stayed olive drab, I don't recall. So he said, well, we'll put it to one side. So that's what we did until we started to fly combat. And we had to put new wings on. So instead of painting the tops of the wings olive drab, we just left those silver. So that's why they're silver.
Thank you, Jack. So there you go, folks. He fessed up to why the top of his P-47 has silver wings. So it's been really great for you guys to share this project with us today. I hope everybody has enjoyed listening to these guys talk about the building of the 2/3 scale P-47 Thunderbolt.